Hi there, welcome to my build of this 65-inch wingspan Great Plains Trainer 60. Now in the videos previous to this we've created the fuselage, or at least the basic fuselage, and we can't do anything now to that until we've built the wings and we've built the tailplane and fin. Now in this video I'm going to be building the tailplane and fin. I've actually started to create some of the components. So we have the tailplane there, really simple. It's just out of quarter 6.4mm balsa, and also the rudder as well, and a couple of pieces there that need to be joined. Now really basic, square edges, and so very easy just to measure these off the plans with a ruler and to cut them out. There's no need to stick the plans on and cut around or anything like that. We can simply, like I said, just measure them off the plans and cut them out. Now, and I've also done the two elevators. Again, very simple. These still need a little bit more trimming on them, and of course it all needs sanding, profiling, round edges putting on and making more streamlined. Now what we're going to do first is we're going to make the tailplane, and I'm going to zoom the camera in now and have a quick look at this and show you what I'm going to do, because I'm not going to follow the plans, because at the moment it's just a big slab of balsa, and I think we can be a little bit more eloquent with it, and we can make it lighter. Yes, it's going to involve a little bit more work, but we can save 50 grams on the weight, which actually is quite a significant amount when we're looking at right down at the end of the plane on this long tail. To achieve the CG, we may end up moving some of the components around, because that weight in the tail might actually be quite important to get the balance. But the lighter we can make the plane, the better. Anyway, I'll zoom the camera in now and we'll have a quick look at that. Well, as I said, a big slab of balsa. In actual fact, it's two pieces of balsa. You've got this central piece and you've got this forward piece. Well, I think we can do a little bit better than that, and as I said, we can save some weight. So I'm going to do a frame around the outside, which is made up of 1/4 by 3/4 inch balsa, or 20mm by 6.4mm. So we'll do that around the edge, and then we'll do these diagonals to give it some strength, and then we'll cover it in 1/16 balsa, or 1.6mm balsa, and then we'll put some wing tips on. So, and I've built tailplanes like this before. If you've seen my Ivanti Patterns plane series, that's how the tailplane is constructed on that, and it's a similar kind of size. So anyway, I'm going to lay this out on the bench. I've already cut the components that I need, just very simple, like I say, this outside frame and the wood that I need for the diagonals. So I'm going to get this laid out, and we'll see how that goes on the build. Now I always get two sets of plans printed, one which you've seen on the wall behind me, and then another one so that I can cut out pieces like this tailplane or templates to help me with the build. Excuse me. So here we've got the tailplane cut out, and I've put that on my balsa building board. Now this is a flat board that's supplied by Sleck in the UK specifically for building on. It's very flat, it's a lovely board, and I always check it as well. So if we just put this straight edge on, we can see that's nice and flat, which is what we want. And so I've got my plans on the balsa board, and on top of that I've got some thin plastic just to stop the balsa from sticking to the plans. This is just like a mylar that you cover books with, so it's cheap, it's easy to use. Now I've put some tape at the sides to hold it flat. I've also put some weights around to not only stop the board from moving but also to keep the plans in place. Now I'm going to build the frame first, and I've got my pieces cut here, and I'll pin these down, and I'm going to be sticking everything together with CA, this Zap CA, it's thin. When I say everything, everything with the frame and the diagonals and the wingtips probably, but when it comes to the sheeting I'll be using either my alphatic resin or PVA, I haven't decided yet. I keep them in these bottles, wide tops, so it's easy just to stick my brush in rather than trying to use it out of the container it's supplied in. So I'm going to be pinning this down and gluing the joints. I've got some 1/4 inch stock that needs to do these side pieces, and then we've got this this rear piece that goes right along. Once I've got that done, I'll do the diagonals and we'll then sheet it, and then we have the wing tips that will, or the tips to the tailplane that will go on. Tailplane tips are thicker than this because that's accounting for two sheets of 1/16 top and bottom. So I will start to get this pinned down and get this all glued together and the diagonals in. Right, well now we've got the basic skeleton of the tailplane finished, which as you saw was a really quick and easy job. So we'll unpin this now, and then we can get rid of the building board. So, but we want to make sure that we keep this nice and flat. Now it's just a little bit stuck to the plastic, but we'll just take this roller and there we go. Simple as that. So we've got that off the building board now, and we'll just stick this upright over here. Now I want to keep this nice and flat now, so I'm going to put this on my cutting mat and just put some weights on it for the moment while I have a look at the sheeting. Now I need to make sheeting for top and bottom out of this 1/16 balsa, and a single piece is not going to be wide enough. This is 100mm 4-inch, it's not going to be wide enough. It needs to be probably 1.5, so it probably needs to be about 6 inch, well 5.5 inch, something like that, or what have we got, 140 mil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this to length, 2 pieces to length, and then I am going to use the bit that's left over to fill in that. So I'll get on and do that now. Right, well, I've now done the 1/16 sheeting, ready to put onto the tailplane skeleton. And one thing I would say about doing this sheeting, the way sticking it together here with CA, is make sure your edges are really straight. You can't rely on the straight edges from your sheet of balsa. You need to cut off a very thin slither to make sure they meet together lovely. So I think I'm going to use PVA and I'm going to glue that onto there, and then we'll drop this one on the top. And once that's PVA, I'm going to weight that down, and I will be leaving that at least 24 hours, probably even longer, just to make sure that it doesn't warp and it's totally dry before I take the weights off. And then we can clean it up and put on the wing tips. Right, well, having glued the sheeting onto the tailplane skeleton with PVA, I've set it aside now and I'm going to leave it there for a good long time, probably a couple of days, to make sure it's absolutely dry. And I've weighted it down, but rather than putting the individual weights on, I've put a piece of MDF, flat MDF on top of the whole tailplane, and then put the weights on top of that, and that will give me good consistent pressure. If I just put the individual weights on, I could end up putting impressions into the soft balsa, or more lightly, or just as lightly, I'm going to get the corners and edges that are lifted up a little bit, because you won't get the consistent pressure. And these big weights, they're slightly rounded on the bottom on edges, so definitely a board is a good way to go. So right, while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to be getting on and preparing some of the other materials and working on the rudder and the tailplane, the rudder and the fin. Now, the tailplane, the rudder, the fin, they've all got just bull nose profiling, a little bit of a curve, and then a bull nose on the leading edges and on the tips of the tailplane. The only thing that's got any major profiling is the elevators, and that just tapers down to a nice streamlined shape, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that now. Really simple. I have my 2 elevators now cut roughly to shape, still need just neatening up a little bit, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to taper the trailing edge down by about 50% of its thickness over about half the width of the elevator. I've actually measured it on the plans and they show it tapering down for about 35 mil inch and a quarter, something like that, over the that whole rear section. So I've got that line on to give me a guide, so I'm going to taper this bit but not touch that bit, so hopefully we won't lose that line during the process. And I've done that on both sides, so I've got a reference, I know where I'm working to. I've also put on a centre line down here and on the edges. In fact, I've done that all the way around. I just did that by hand and by eye, and that will give me something to work to when I'm profiling this elevator. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to use my Tailplane and whoops, just kick the camera, and I'm just going to put it on the edge of the bench, and I'm just going to gradually take off very smooth slices. And if we can get the shavings nice and you know, continuous, that will give us a much more even removal of balsa, rather than doing a little bit here, a little bit there. You can see they're coming off quite nicely now, and we need to keep checking that that distance there. So a little bit more on this side. Right, well, I've now got that down as much as I'm going to do with the plane, and hopefully you can see it's how we've done that. Now I'm just going to give that a very light sanding now. It's nice soft balsa, so it's not going to take much, and then all we'll need to do is finish off these corners and put a bull nose on the edges here. In fact, I'll probably put a bull nose on the outer edge, and on this central join I'll probably just leave that fairly square. So there we go, we have one of our elevators finished, and as you can see, hopefully still got my reference lines on here and down the centre. It'll need a final sanding, as everything will, but it's more or less there now, and you can see we've taken that down about 50% of what the original thickness was. Well, we're all finished now with the rudder, the fin and the tailplane and elevators. The tailplane ended up being a week under my weight drying. It didn't really need that long, but I just got other things I was doing, other projects. So I thought, well, I'll just leave it there on the bench and make sure it's nice and dry. And it's lovely and flat, nice and light. Now these are all finished except for a little bit of profiling. Still got the bull nose to go on all of the edges, all of the leading edges anyway. And I've put on the radiuses a little bit here. The elevators, I have profiled those, but again they're going to need some more work, some more finishing, and that'll get done when I come to fit them around that time. So anyway, with these done, I'm going to draw this video to a close, and looking forward now in the next video to starting to build the wings. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please come back and see how we get on building those wings. That's a really exciting stage of the construction of this plane.